a bird. It's a plane. It's
Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action. This is Mark Wade, writer of Superman Birthright, and you're listening to
the All Things Kryptonian podcast, including Superman and Supergirl.
We discuss games, movies, cartoons, TV shows, and comics.
Find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter.
If you want to help out this show and any other show on Southgate Media Group and you really don't have the extra money to do so, check this out. Go to southgatemediagroup.com. At the top, there's a link to Amazon. Click that, log into your Amazon, shop and buy like normal, and part of the money that you spend comes back to us to help us with our podcasts. Hello, everybody. I just want to let you know that Southgate Media Group has its own Patreon. That's right. For $5 a month, you can get exclusive shows, content, and interviews with the different podcasters of the network. This Week in Geek is a Patreon exclusive only series. So check it out. Go www.patreon.com/Southgate Media Group. We are always adding new content.
This is Dan Jurgens, and if you want to have a good time, keep listening to the Krypton Report.
Welcome to the Krypton Report. I'm your host, Tyler, the Superman of Blue, and with me is my bestest pal, my friend in the other part of Ohio, the one, the only, Mr. James Cole, the Superman of Red.
My best friend.
Welcome, James, to this wonderful night. We're going to have fun. I'm really excited to talk this. We're going to talk Kingdom Come, but we're going to do this issue by issue, and we're going to do it monthly, kind of like how they released it. Because I feel the more I read this book, the more I get out of it. The more, I've talked before on the podcast about how I always identify more with the writer, and I always go to the words, and I look at the art. But I feel like the more I read certain books, I start really studying the art more and more. And I found that when I was rereading this, and I haven't reread this, I used to read it a lot. Well, at least once a year. And I was thinking about it today. I think the last time I read Kingdom Come was maybe 5 to 6 years ago. It's when I met Mark Waid, and I've met Mark Waid twice. The first time I had him sign Kingdom Come, and the second time I had him do Superman Birthright.
That's excellent choice either way around.
It was just the book that I could get to the first. And right. The first time, and because the second time is when I asked if I could do an interview with him. So, the first time I was just more nervous. And so I was like, ugh. And since the podcast, was more Superman focused, I thought, well, if I had the nerve to meet him again and talk to him, Birthright would be what I'd want to have in my hand. Kingdom Come. And if you don't know what this book is, I highly recommend checking it out. It is on DC Infinite. That's actually where I have it pulled up because my signed copy by Mark Waid is packed away as we're approaching our move. James, when was the first time you read this? Do you know?
I'm trying to remember how many years ago I bought Kingdom Come. Because I didn't read it early, I didn't read it back when it first came out.
I feel like I wouldn't have appreciated it as much if I would have read it when it first came out.
Right. I read it because of the hype around it being such a great story with phenomenal artwork. So, I probably got it within the last 6 or 7 years. And that's when I read it. I bought the trade.
I bought it, and what's crazy is I bought it solely because this was about 2008, maybe? Between 2006 and 8. And what it was I had moved, and there was even saying this makes me seem old, but a Dalton bookstore in the mall. And they used to do, because like where I lived for the longest time, there was no comic shops. And when I first started driving, the only comic shop that I could get to was kind of far away, and I still like had to drive through downtown, so I was always kind of nervous about driving it. And so where I was living at the time, the Dalton Books had graphic novels, and they had a big sale where it was like buy 3, get 1 free, and they were already like a percentage off the cover price. So I just was like, cool, and I just started buying stuff up. And I think I bought, I think I did 2 rounds of it. And in those 2 rounds, I got Identity Crisis, Kingdom Come, the All-Star Batman and Robin, and then I got parts 1 and 2 of Alex Ross's Justice. And then there was one more book. So there was 6 I ended up buying total. And I do not remember what the other one was off the top of my head. Because they didn't have a whole lot left. So, and this was one I picked up. I kind of read it. I looked at the artwork and was like, cool. Because I really was getting into buying more than just reading at the time. And that's when I first read it. I remember the title. Like, I remember hearing the title, and always having this prestige with it. And I loved it. And the first thing that I loved about it when I started reading it was the idea of like the religious biblical connection, because I was going to Bible school, Bible college. The idea of the book of Revelation kind of coming to fruition through the superheroes. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. So
interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't have such a close relationship with that, but I know the book. Yeah, I just, I heard about what it was, Alex Ross's art, sure, and so I got the book because it'd been touted on. It's a great book. It's a great read.
It's definitely
really good storytelling.
It's massively influential, and for anyone who is younger, this book, when you read this book, you will see what helped inspire Mark Millar to write Jupiter's Legacy. There's a lot of parallels in the Jupiter Legacy book and TV series in themes that fall into the Kingdom Come style.
Very interesting.
So some quick backstory here. Kingdom Come is a 4-issue comic book miniseries published in 1996. This year is the 25th anniversary. I wanted to kind of time it with when like the original releases were, but this year's been so crazy because of just we have continual shows, with all year with Superman and Lois and with Supergirl and stuff. Like usually we have a nice break and we can spread more stuff out. But it was an Elseworlds imprint. It was written by Mark Waid and Alex Ross, because Alex Ross had an idea and wrote a 40-page handwritten outline treatment. And the idea was an opus, much like Watchmen. And Ross had done Marvels in 1994 for, guess who? Marvel.
Imagine that.
I've read that one. I used to have it. I think my brother took my copy of it, and then he probably sold it because he's like that. But the story was given by editors to Mark Waid to write. I think it was Sherry Robinson. No, there was another. Maybe it was. There was another writer that Alex Ross originally had in mind. But Mark Waid has such a huge, vast knowledge of the history of the DC characters that he was chosen by editors to be the one to write the book with Alex. And the character of the preacher that's in it is based off Alex's father. And anyone who's familiar with Alex's work will know that he uses a lot of times he'll use models to like stand in poses, certain poses, and then he will paint and draw and paint the characters from the models. And in the trade paperback that I had, I think it has a picture of Alex's father, and you can see it in the character of the preacher.
Oh.
Some more, just kind of some impact things, and then we'll, like I said, we'll dive into the book. But of course, most recently, that's been present as Brandon Routh's costume for the Crisis on Infinite Earth was basically the Kingdom Come suit. It was the suit and style. He had the gray in his hair, which I think that was an excellent choice to kind of be the first one to don this legacy, this suit, have the extension of his film series. You know, I think he was the perfect choice to kind of bring to life the Kingdom Come-esque Superman.
Yeah. Well, he was so young in Superman Returns that the time passage and everything, him actually getting to come back to the world. I mean, it's really awesome that they figured to put him as like Kingdom Come Clark.
Yeah,
Kingdom Come Super.
It's great because it's something for fans. It also sets him apart, and it kind of really gives him his own identity as Superman a little bit more compared to how, I mean, his costume was different than Christopher's.
Well, because he was an extension of Reeves, so it does kind of give him, an opportunity to set his version apart, even though he was so close to Reeves and, you know, pretty much an extension of Reeves.
Because
that happens.
Speaking of Reeves, want to hear something interesting?
What's that?
Did you know that Kirk Alyn and George were both 37 when they became Superman?
Oh, wow.
And do you know that Gerard Christopher, when he became Superboy, was older than Brandon Routh, Tyler Hoechlin, and Henry Cavill?
What?
I think Tyler might be the variable. I got to think back. But when Henry Cavill and Brandon Routh as Superman were younger than when Gerard Christopher debuted as Superboy.
Yeah, because I know that both Brandon and Henry were about 24 to 27.
Yeah.
Right around that range. I'm pretty sure Brandon was like 24. And Henry was either 26 or 27. That was filming.
Because Henry's 2 years older. He's 2 years older than us. So, and then think that Man of Steel was filming in 2011 and 2012-ish because the goal was to have it released in 2012 originally. So it was ready to go by December of 2012 because that's when it was supposed to be released before they moved it to May of 2013. But here is one more cool tidbit. I actually wanted to get this person on the podcast to talk about this, and I'd actually like to read this. But the novelization for Kingdom Come was written by Elliot S. Maggin. It was published by Warner Aspect as a hardback. It fleshes out the characters such as Magog and the world leaders and Batman's connection in the story. The book also contained 4 new color pages by Ross, as well as 4 black and white sketches of the major players. An audio play was adapted based off the novelization. And, of course, they've made action figures of Kingdom Come. Wonder Woman's armor from 1984 is very kind of Kingdom Come style, and the exoskeleton that Batman wore, the Kevin Conroy in Crisis, was very Kingdom Come style. So that's all my kind of background notes. Here's a quick summary of the stories, and we'll get into it. The Elseworld story is a deconstruction tale set in a future that deals with a growing conflict between the visibly out-of-touch traditional superheroes and a growing population of largely amoral and dangerous, irresponsible new vigilantes, in many cases the offspring of the traditional heroes. Now, when this was written, this was the time, and one of the influences was it was very much the world of the anti-hero in comics. You had Wolverine, you had Lobo. This is, I think, when you had Punisher Warzone. You had Spawn, right? Yeah, Spawn was out then. Yeah.
Spawn was in the 90s.
Yeah, but I was thinking Spawn the movie was 97, so the comic was out earlier. I just trying to get my times table right. Because, I was 11 when this book came out. And if I had read this when it came out, it would have been cool, but it wouldn't have hit me as hard as it does now. So.
Yeah, you would not see the concept.
And you wouldn't appreciate the idea of the values and everything that the characters are trying to uphold and protect and what the new heroes are doing. So are you ready? Issue 1, Kingdom Come. And I will say this is probably like the cover I like the least. I like the way Alex Ross did the covers, but this is like the Spectre with like a whole bunch of the new heroes that we have no idea who anybody is. All right, here we go.
Basic side, Spectre up front.
Yeah, so the Spectre and then a bunch of new people. You're like, all right. Which I think is an interesting choice, First page, beautiful art. And what do we see, James? But a giant mythical-looking bat with a eagle, bald eagle with like American flag kind of painted in it, attacking. And there were voices and thundering and lightning and an earthquake. And then we see more just kind of destruction and very, very prophetic, because we're basically getting scripture of the book of Revelation over top of the images. And the next page is like a battle in the back in green fire. A man is burning on his knees. A hand is holding a lightning bolt. And then the next page is when we get a preacher sitting at the bedside of a man named Wesley. And Wesley's talking about the images he's seeing and the visions. And who is this man, James?
Wesley Dodds. The nurse comes in. Geez, Mr. Dodds. So, because he had ripped out his IV on his arm. But yeah, this is the Sandman, Wesley Dodds.
So the one thing I was thinking about, it's kind of tricky because this is like JSA time. You have like the JSA sprinkled in, the old school. I don't want to say like it's the golden age grown up, because technically the golden age was, ended with For the Man Who Has Ever, or Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. But this is kind of like that Earth 2-ish JSA Justice League thing where, because as we'll learn, the Flash of this is not Barry Allen. It is Jay Garrick. And the Green Lantern is Alan Scott. So those always are like points to help us determine where we are. But then you have Superman. And Superman was never really part of JSA till like later with the Jeff Johns type stuff at times. And it was weird. But anyways. So we have Sandman. And what I admire in this next page is, if you look, as the preacher goes to read, if you look behind him, there's a person with wings coming down and with the gargoyles. And then the next panel, you see people flying. And then at the bottom, you see more and more people flying. And it says, "Behold, I shew you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed." And then the next page is the funeral. And the preacher, he talks about not many people coming and how him and his wife, who had passed, became friends with Wesley Dodds over time. and how they tried to tell him not to live in the past, but yet wanted to hear stories of his glory days. And then we see a newspaper that says, UN enacts more metahuman centuries. Will centuries curb metahuman violence? 91% say no, 7% say yes, 2% say undecided. And then this is where we have the preacher walking around, and you see, people out and about. And you know what's interesting? If you look at the top panel, the person's holding their hand out and two people are looking. It almost looks like they're taking a selfie.
Yeah, it does.
Even though, that wasn't a thing yet.
Right? Taking a selfie, or they're pointing up, they're looking at the same thing.
Right. But it's just interesting, how you might interpret that reading it. But as Wesley goes, he sees a statue that had, fallen down.
This is the preacher.
Yeah, not Wesley. My mistake.
What's his name? Last name. Right?
They say it here in a minute.
I was trying to get there.
But he passes a shop that's and he's talking about how there's no more human achievement.
Okay.
Yeah. Nor man, as in normal man. And he talks about there's no more Olympic Games or Nobel Prizes. There's no more achievement by mankind, humans. We see an old shop that has antiques, and it says, special signed game ball from the last ever World Series in 2002. There's Under the Hood by Hollis Mason. I never caught that before. Holy cow, that's cool.
Oh, wow. No, I never saw that.
See what I'm saying? Just going through and kind of really, studying. Now, the next page is when...
That's a fantastic catch.
Yes, it is.
It's a Watchman plug right there.
The next part is awesome. When you turn the page, he's going to Planet Krypton. And it is a diner. And we see, above Planet Krypton, we see Plastic Man, very Super Frenzy type characters. And there's even a Lobo in that style. But he walks into the diner, and he's greeted by a Green Lantern who's like, good afternoon, citizen. How may I serve you? And he has a menu.
So at this time, do you think it's in poor taste to have, what would be Planet Krypton, and the sign is an exploding planet with a rocket flying around it? Seems to be away from it.
I think, yeah. I think the concept of the restaurant is awesome.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I don't know why Warner Brothers doesn't have restaurants like this in Six Flags or wherever, or just pop up a chain of restaurants like this, is Johnny
I'd
Rockets
totally
even...
be happy to have DC superheroes waiter and waitress me some food.
Right, just hire people who like to cosplay. You know what I'm saying? They get an extra bonus if they use their own costume. But I'm just thinking, is there even Johnny Rockets anymore? I don't know. But it always makes me think of the Hard Rock Cafe.
There's Johnny Rockets around still.
Okay. That's what I'm saying. I don't know anymore. The one that I knew of, I haven't been down there in forever, but because the movie theater closed. But Planet Hollywood pretty much folded up. And granted, there used to be one in Columbus, a Planet Hollywood, and it closed and became a Max and Irma's. And then I don't even know what it is now because I haven't been around there forever. But it's just interesting because it's just, burgers and fries type joint, but it's the atmosphere that you go to. So I think if this was an actual restaurant, I would be there all the time to pay overpriced for hamburgers. The hamburger they have at Hard Rock is good, but it's a little overpriced. But you love the environment, you know?
Right.
That's why you go.
Yeah. The guy greeting at the door, what do you think? Not a bad job on the tights, huh? They tell me I make a pretty good green, what do you call them, arrow?
Yeah. You don't even know what he's doing.
Yeah.
We have an Aquaman, a Flash, but the Flash is very much Barry Allen style. So that's just interesting, you know? And then you have a Wonder Woman who looks like she could care less, a Shazam in the background, a Batman looks like just like a costume. And
it's like an Adam West costume inside of the inside of the case.
Because then you have your very almost Carrie Kelly looking, because of the hair color, Robin taking orders.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you turn the page, as I just want to call him Wesley, as Norman is leaving, we see a streak run by him. And then the next panel, we see it's from the comic book where Jimmy Olsen turns into like a giant turtle. Look on the marquee.
Oh, yeah. The Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen.
Mm-hmm. And it's just him narrating. He says, the Sandman had gone to his grave without one grain of faith in the future. And the saddest part was he was far from alone. With each passing day, hope for tomorrow has become more and more precious, a commodity among everyday folk. Still, I tried to keep the faith and too hew to the scriptures. According to the word of God, the meek would someday inherit the earth. Someday. And then you see like a bus flipped. And when you turn the page, it's just... And he says, but God would never accommodate for the mighty. And it's 1, 2... Let's see. I'm trying to figure out who's fighting who here. But there's basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 super beings kind of fighting here. And it's just all out destruction. And it's crazy because when you turn the next page, it's just, you can just see the chaos, and people are running and screaming, and people are getting hurt on the side. And the world Wesley left is filled not with his heroes, but with their children and grandchildren that number in the nameless thousands, progeny of the past, inspired by the legends of those who came before, if not the morals. They no longer fight for the right, they fight simply to fight. Their only foe is each other. The superhumans boast that they've all but eliminated the supervillains of yesteryear. And I think that's what's important, is the concept, just kind of like in you and I did Whatever Happened to Truth, Justice, and the American Way, and the film version, the Superman versus the Elite, about, the things that Superman does and stands for, how important they really are. The protection of, every person, the thinking of people, and trying to stop the collateral damage, and how these people are just crazy. I mean, if you turn the page, you'll see where Norman saves a little girl, and there's a dude basically in some crazy S&M gear knocked down, just kind of laughing. And then the bottom panel is like a girl crying, and the caption just says, they're supposed to be our protectors.
Yeah, and the page before that, you got all those people running, and then the Minotaur goes through the wall, and there's a woman on the other side, which looks like she may break the head.
Yeah.
So they don't care about anyone around or anyone around them.
And I think it's interesting. There's so many characters, and they all look, I don't want to say rip off, but I feel like there's definitely some of that 90s Jim Lee influence in some of these designs. Because it looks like this one dude, S&M dude, looks kind of like Cable. kind of thing, of just like the big guns and the layeredness. And you don't have to name them. Yeah, the straps and belts that make no sense, that look so cool, but then afterwards you're like, I don't get it. And none of them really have names. Like very few of them, I think, actually get a name in this. And I'm gonna smack myself next time I say Wesley. I just like that name, I guess. Wesley. Say it with me again.
You do.
Wesley.
Wesley Crusher.
And Norman tells himself, I tell myself that this too shall pass, that humans still have a chance to reclaim a world rightfully theirs while it still exists. And then the next page is basically you see something happen in Kansas. And it's like a bullseye zone. And it says, he says, I am wrong. And you just see a bunch of people kind of looking.
Yeah, like whatever happened in Kansas, which we'll find out, just stuns everybody.
And then the next page is him preaching. And he's in the middle of preaching to his congregation. And basically, he freezes. Everybody's looking to him to lead. And he freezes and he apologizes. And this is very strong. If you're looking at the art, is like on the second panel is the classic painting of Jesus praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, which is the same type of stained glass panel that Henry Cavill was in front of in Man of Steel when he was talking to the preacher.
Mm.
And then the next panel is Norman ripping pages out of the Bible and tearing them up. And he's angry. And then the next page is when the Spectre shows up. The real Spectre, the beautiful Spectre, not.
Not Oliver Queen.
Yeah. And then this is where he says, I have need of you, Norman McKay. So the preacher's name is Norman McKay. That's what I was waiting for.
Yeah, sorry. I got ahead of ourselves.
James is like, I'm too excited.
Well, it's better since you kept calling him Wesley anyways.
Yeah, I know. Stupid Tyler. But he talks about how he needs him. And he's asking, are you an angel? And he's like, no, not really. A sort of higher power has charged me with the task of punishing those responsible for this coming evil. In order to carry out my task, I must anchor myself to a human soul who seeks justice. And Norman says, but I don't. And of course, Spectre says, you will. And basically he says, come with me. And I'm just trying to look at the panel in the middle. It looks interesting. At the top, looks almost kind of Dr. Manhattan-y, but I think that's his finger in a weirdly placed position.
Yeah, I think so. That looks like his hand.
Yeah, it is. But it was just a glance. I was like, whoa.
Well, because in the panel before, it's in the same place, but it's got whoa.
It's the shading
with his hand, and yeah.
Good job on that one, censors.
Right? Probably was that before. Then they're like, he has to.
He takes Norman's hand and they disappear. And this is where it starts to get fun. It says, where are we? What do you see? I see a Midwestern farmland, but that's not possible. There is no need to lower your voice. We cannot be seen or heard, not even by him. And who do we have? James?
Well, apparently somebody said it's hippie Superman, but looks like Superman in his overalls, shirtless, working on the farm.
Yeah, in overalls with long hair and graying.
Yep, a full gray beard, gray inside his hair, and yeah, long hair.
I mean, think about that, okay? This is the 90s. Everybody had long hair, okay? I'm just looking at something real quick here, because I'm just thinking this came out in 96. And
Yeah, you sent that review. I was like, oh my goodness. That's a hippie Superman. Okay.
well, I mean,
Alright,
someone
but-
said that they drew Wonder Woman ugly. And I mean, I think they draw Wonder Woman a little really
No, she's
Over-
not
over-
ugly.
erotic the way they draw like her. She doesn't have like the Spanx on. She has like a loincloth.
Oh yeah.
Okay. That's what
Yeah,
her skirt is.
she's got a chest piece that covers up her torso, and then the front and back tails of the loincloth that cover up her groin area and her butt. Like that's it. It's not
She's very
it's not
hippie.
underwear underneath. It's not like the Spanx like said or whatever, or like the bikini style suit that she's had since Linda Carter wore it and in the comics.
Yeah. Her hips are full on. And we see that, I like how this, he came to Earth with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men. And he's walking holding the tractor. And he's like Superman, and he's been exiled for 10 years now. Self-imposed exile. And he says he looks so alone. And then here comes Wonder Woman. And she says, "Hello, Clark." And then he looks at her, and she calls him Cal. He's basically ditched his Clark identity and wants to be referred to as Cal. And basically they're talking about him being there and him talking about working on the farm. Things need to grow. And she says, "Really?" and touches it. And you find out it's all like a simulation. And here's a great example of Wonder Woman. If you look in the bottom left panel, how the wind is blowing her loincloth. And as Superman turns back on the simulation of the sun on the farm set here, because the animals look like they're going a little crazy. The horses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because in the previous page, Cal lost so much since I first met you. Since Earthling died. Which is, they were your parents, Clark. Cal. She, your wife. And she was your wife. Don't call them.
And right there, I mean,
like he's detached himself from
everything.
Yeah, from everything. From the life he had before being Clark.
From being Clark, you know, his job, his friends, his parents, everything. He is just, but yet he's still working on a farm.
Right. So he hasn't lost it all. Even though he will deny it and be stubborn-headed as they all can be, there's still part of him that's still home for him.
Mm-hmm.
On the farm.
Even though he's on the farm in the fortress. And she's basically telling him, here are two words, see if they sound familiar. Truth and justice. You can't have completely forgot them. She says, just free for yourself. He has let happen to the world. That's all I ask. And he walks and says, on. And you see just multiple screens talking about what was going on. And then we see gray hair, chested Superman say, Magog. And then the next page talks about basically they're fighting Parasite, and it's Boba Fett, but it's like Boba Fett, Peacemaker had a child together.
Right. Does look like that.
Right? And then there's some other characters that just, who are they? And Magog, but they're fighting Parasite. And there's a line here that says, the Parasite, where is it? Parasite was fearful. He was pleading for mercy, and they were ignored.
Yeah, his surrender.
And he was just trying to stop, but the one person is Captain Atom. And it says basically Parasite ended up ripping Captain Atom open. And when he did that, it leaked out his radiation and just killed everyone, animals and everything, and became a complete wasteland.
Yeah, for 100 kilometers, or for hundreds of kilometers, millions dying of Dr. Adams' radioactive,
Nebraska,
rendering
Iowa.
the entire state of Kansas, as well as parts of Nebraska, Iowa, and irradiated wasteland. Though Magog's comrades have since prevented further spread of the blight, the total loss of American breadbasket, sterilization of its agrarian culture has thrown the world economy to collapse, basically.
Magog, along with the Metal Man, Alloy, the sole survivors of the incident, could not be reached for, and he turns it off. And then Wonder Woman's like, Cal, our generation takes its lead from you. We have always, you must, whoa, hey, that was for both of us. Brian,
Yeah.
That guy. Cal.
Yeah.
That fun guy. And he basically is like, there's nothing I can do from here. Go back to your island, Diana. You're safe here. Or you're safe there. And she flies up. And I think what's very interesting is, I feel like after this story, we've gotten a lot of similar theme type Superman, of like Superman like giving up or moving away, or even like the evil Superman kind of like, you know, I'll take control over. But that's not what this story is. I think it just adds to the depth of this story. And then the next part's where the Spectre is showing Normal Man.
Yeah.
That, you know, he talks about in the city of Superman's absence, Keystone City has become a utopia, a protector, relentlessly patrolled by a force once human. But he's not even human anymore. That's a big deal. No one sees him. No one hears him. He runs a lonely race, but all who lives here have felt his presence. He is everywhere at once, a guardian angel who's right even the most harmless of wrongs with lightning speed. He lives between the ticks of a second. He is the Flash. And then we find out that Hawkman, who looks very much like a straight-up hawk bird, is in the Pacific Northwest, stopping people from deforesting. And then we find out that Alan Scott, Green Lantern, waits in his Emerald Palace above the sky. And then we see like a panel of...
His knight's armor is pretty looking.
Yeah, it is.
It's very cumbersome, but it's pretty cool looking.
He talks about the gods of yesteryear no longer walk among the humans, Norman McKay. Instead, cued by Superman's surrender, they journey apart, divorced from the common men who they once so gladly served. They have lost themselves in ancient civilizations and future times. They have left humanity to its own fate. Then basically he asked about Batman. And then we see Gotham City, crime, people running, and then a giant Batman-looking robot that shines bat signal, and then there's multiple bat robots that surround them. And then you see the Spectre basically say Batman has his city under control. And then we're back to a cityscape scene. And Norman turns to the Spectre and is like, that's all? That's what you have to show me? And he talks about how he's supposed to be an angel, a messenger of hope. A greater power sent you. That's a testament to faith. And of course, he's quoting scripture and everything.
Yeah, saying he's the angel, a messenger of hope. Greater power sent you. Very existence is a testament to faith. He's just upset with him about the fact that because of Superman's absence, that all hope's been lost.
Yeah, because the people that are left don't care.
So, and we get dropped in on this bridge. A cable car.
A cable car caught between two groups of just gun blaring, ridiculous looking people. Like villains.
They
you
are.
don't know who the hero. The thing is, you don't know who's the hero and who's the villain.
No, not in this shot. You don't.
And that's the part of the point. And the cable car is going down. And, normal man.
Guns blazing. They take out the cables and it's falling.
And then they're watching. He says, "We need hope." And the next page is like this. And suddenly there was a wind. No, not a wind, a blur. I'm going to say that again, James. Blur.
Blur.
Of motion.
Red and blue blur.
The red blue blur. What? Say it a little bit slower. The blur. Change that name. That sounds pathetic, James. A blur of motion bending the steel of their weapons and changing the very course of the mighty river below. And we see the cable car basically put on the street by a cyclone of water. Even before the bystanders freed themselves from the cable car, they knew. We all did. We knew and remembered. Look. You say the next part, James.
Up in the sky.
And then there stands, and probably one of the most iconic shots, Superman in his new costume, holding who we now know were the villains. And he's just looking down.
Quite possibly, in his eyes, they're basically all villains right now. Superman does what he does. He comes in, he eliminates all the weapons from one group of people, and, basically sends them flying, like 4 people, sends them flying back, and he rescues the cable car, and he comes up with the other half, the other group, hanging unconscious.
And this is our first look at the quote-unquote Kingdom Come suit. And the next one is, he had not turned his back on us. He stands in the sky, faith rewarded. He is returned, and then he remembers the image he had of the Burning Man, and it's actually Superman on his knees. And he says, "Dear God, the threat of Armageddon hasn't ended. It's just begun." And that's the end of the first issue.
Sir.
I mean,
very good. It's very good, very well written. It's not too heavy. It's not too heavy in dialogue or narration or anything.
This first book,
yeah,
it
setting up a
as
world. You can definitely see why a first book in an Elseworlds story could feel like a slog.
And I kind of wish, like, could you imagine reading this back in the day, issue by issue?
Well, it's definitely made to be a trade,
Mm-hmm.
Like I read it on my tablet earlier, and I read it and I've been flipping through it on my laptop here while talking, and seems off. Just reading it issue by issue.
It is very interesting. I mean, you make that stop, and this book
Perfect
has been
stopping
released.
point for the issue, though.
Oh yeah, this book has been released in multiple covers. Cover 2 being my favorite. Go figure. So, but, yeah. Cover 2 is the one that has Superman, and, now we have Superman, Red Arrow, Red Robin, and Wonder Woman, and then Norman on it. So it'll be interesting because we also, talking back to what we discussed before, Power Girl's here compared to Supergirl. So any last final thoughts on Kingdom Come issue 1?
No, I think we covered it really well, but you haven't read. It is like this, and if you liked books like Watch, things that are a little more destructive in nature, something a little different, certainly.
It's also, it's also self-contained.
Oh yeah, for sure.
If you have a general census of who Superman, Batman, and like Wonder Woman are, you're good. If you just want to read a great story and that be it, and not have to have all the history of everything.
Yeah, because it'll give you the history of the story.
I would rate this book out of 5. What do you rate it?
For a first issue, I give it a 3.5. Fantastic artwork. 3.5 out of 5.
I'll give it a
because
4.
I know that
4.5.
I know that some more is, yeah. Well, because I know some of the other issues. It's been, it took me a second to get going into it. The first few pages in.
I think it's also difficult because I'm looking back, knowing where the story goes, and the first time I read it in trade, so I just kept going. I was engrossed.
Right.
That's what you want, but being that it's the first done, you're like, huh, okay.
Well, I guess, yeah. I guess thinking about it is I know that some of the issues coming up are going to be fantastic, and this was great as well. It's above average. It's not just an average comic. I say it was a slow grab until Spectre shows up. It shows you some of the world though, but it's after Wesley dies and after the congregation. It just, it picks up right away. Or it picks up after a short bit. So just a few pages, and then you're going. So yeah, I remember that when I read it the first time too. Flipping through the first few pages. This artwork is amazing, and maybe it was scripture and stuff that didn't get me, but.
It's great to revisit, and when I was younger, I was like obsessed with the Book of Revelation because it was no matter how you look at the Bible, and if you, not to get like theological or anything, but like the book of Revelation is basically all prophecy, you know. It's the only quote unquote part of the Bible that has yet to really come to be, you know, depending on your beliefs and everything. So it's very open for interpretation. And so just kind of that, using that backdrop and those words behind the images is just extremely powerful. So, and it looks like my little young
great
generation
imagery,
of heroes need to be taken care of by this old and graying Superman. So I'm going to have to, you know.
Well, you go save the day.
You know, look at that final page of him holding him like he is. I'm about to do that to my two. Back in bed. And we're going to put a pin in it there. You know, come back next month and we'll get into part 2. So from James and I, this is episode 253 of the Krypton Report. And remember,
if you're like me and you love listening to different podcasts about Superman, I have a few that I want you to check out. Some of my favorites are The Last Sons of Krypton. Connor and Ray are always reviewing different books, and it's really nice and refreshing to kind of dig back into older stuff. The Aspiring Kryptonian, Tasman and her team are always finding interesting people to interview. Digging for Kryptonite has become one of my favorite ones to listen to, as Anthony digs into different eras of the character. There's always the Always Hold On to Smallville, which I've guested on before, if you're wanting to step back into that nostalgia realm. So check out all these, and there are many, many more. So check out our Twitter, because we're constantly finding new podcasts that inspire and bring hope to everyone around. The Krypton Report is part of the Southgate Media Group network of podcasts. If you have an interest, check out Southgate Media Group to see if your podcast is there. I bet it is. At the Southgate Media Group website, you can sign up for our newsletter. You'll get info on all the shows, and you can find what you want. You'll also find links to our sponsors where you can get great products and support the podcast. Also, our book, Pod Life, Podcasting Stories. It's a great book. Check it out. It's nice to hear where people come from and why they do what they do. And remember,